afternoon, everybody. Mayor Tom Koch here in Quincy, Massachusetts. I'm joined by Police Chief Paul Keenan, Fire Chief Joe Barron, and Public Works Commissioner Al Grazioso, who represent a number of men and women who are out in the field as we speak. City of Quincy was hit very hard, far harder than the January blizzard. To those of us that remember the blizzard of '78, it's probably the closest thing to blizzard of '78 we've seen. We still have about 4,700 people without power in the Howes Neck area. We have rescued, evacuated about 50 people, some by boat. We have a backlog of about 50 calls at this point for pumping from people's homes. So obviously we're not going to stop pumping until the tides recede, and that is explained to folks as we go along. In preparation of the storm, we did visit neighborhoods last night, encouraging people in those low-lying areas to find another home for the evening, go to a friend's house, and many did that, but many did not. So we have crews out there that continue to work with those folks. We have a little bit of a window now with the tide receding. The Squantum Peninsula is open again. The causeway is open. C Street at the Willows is still down. The water has not receded enough at this point to open up to that peninsula. I believe Germantown is now open as well, but we do expect all those peninsulas to be closed again later today as the tide comes in once again. We did prepare. We had extra apparatus on each of the peninsulas. We added extra fire apparatus, police vehicles, DPW vehicles in preparation, as well as ambulance services on the peninsulas, plus 7 more on the mainland. So going into it, we were well prepared, did all we needed to do to the tide gates, but this storm was just overwhelming and certainly surcharged in all the areas. One of the things we're looking at for tonight is, with the tide coming in again, we have creeks and rivers and brooks throughout the city that feed down into basins that feed into the ocean. Those basins usually are opened up once the tide goes out to release the water. We're not able to do that because the tide is not going out far enough. So we've got people in other low-lying areas that we are informing this afternoon that they're going to be very careful tonight. They should at least move their cars and be ready to evacuate some of those areas as the Furnace Brook and other streams start to overflow. So we are preparing for that in addition to the coastal damage that was done earlier. So. With that, I'd be happy to open up with any questions anybody may have.
Are you considering any mandatory evacuations tonight, given what happened this morning?
You know, we've talked about that. Most of the folks that have lived through this, particularly Howes Neck, Squantum, were smart enough to move out and get out for the night. Some took the chance. I know it's tough to leave your home. You don't want to leave your valuables. But I think that evacuation stuff going forward should not be as bad as it was today. And certainly in the coastal areas, they're out. I mean, some of these homes have so much damage, some of them won't be able to go back to it to stay overnight anyway. They've lost the heat and electricity and so forth. So the others I don't see it going up to the first or second floor like we saw with some of them along the coast. So it's going to be more advisory, but we will be prepared. So I don't see a mandatory evacuation at this point.
How many homes were damaged? Like you said, 50 people were rescued. Can you describe what that scene was like and like how badly it was?
Well, I'll step back a little bit. Perhaps one of the chiefs could talk a little bit about that because it was their manpower directly out there. You guys
and Chief, just say your first last name too.
My name is Chief Paul Keenan from the Quincy Police Department. Who's with me is Chief Joseph Barron from the Fire Department. Most of the damage that the houses sustained was wind damage and water damage. Some of the houses, particularly in the Adams Shore, Post Island area, the water reached up to the first floor. So that's where the evacuations that mostly took place. So that's where most of our efforts were concentrated, although we did have resources throughout the city. That was the most challenging part.
And 50 people were like literally helped out of their homes?
Yeah, yes, they were. They were helped out of their homes. We took them out on rafts and boats. Front end loaders, the DPW was out in force with front end loaders, and we had to have a number of evacuations with the front end loaders because it was so high. The water was so high that was all that could get in there.
Some of them vehicles, trapped in vehicles.
We did have a number of rescues from vehicles that pulled into low-lying areas and got trapped up in the water. Those vehicles are still in place. When the water goes down, we'll start to try and tow those away. But we did take a number of people out of vehicles as well.
What are some of the low-lying areas you're particularly concerned about going forward?
Actually, just across from where we're standing is Black's Creek, and as Black's Creek fills up from the Furnace Brook, once it starts to surcharge and all that area of west, I guess it'd be Lafayette Street, Putnam Street, Hudson Street, Armory Street, those areas we'll be watching very closely. And quite frankly, they are used to that a little bit. We've had some issues with that neighborhood over the years. further back upstream as we go toward West Quincy, in the hills of West Quincy. Remember that a third of the Blue Hills is in Quincy, so a lot of the drainage coming from West Quincy makes its way down from Milton through Quincy and West Quincy. So you get to low-lying areas of Albrecht Road, Joyce Road, Miller Street, Cross Street. A number of those areas, Bellew Street, West Quincy, that it's right by the expressway, and it's like a bowl. So it has nowhere to go if the furnace broke, is all backed up. So we spent a lot of energy and effort and resource over the last 3 years looking at these areas. In fact, we have money from FEMA for a pump station in one of these streets. So we're making progress. You know, we've had too many 100-year storms in a short period of time.
How many homes do you think are in these low-lying areas near Black Street?
Oh boy, that's a good question. There's probably a solid 50 homes in this neighborhood, and then further up the other way, probably about 3 dozen that could be affected.
Are the tidal gates functioning as they're supposed to?
Yes, they are, but you know, much of the coastal event happened coming over the seawalls, over the marshes, in from the marshes. So the tide gates did what they're supposed to do.
What's the biggest concern as we approach the next high tide?
Well, safety is obviously a top concern, so we'll make sure that you know, the apparatus, everyone's still manned. We're holding on to people, extra people in. We have 3 shelters we've opened, one in each of the peninsulas and one at Quincy High School. We have a handful of people at this point in there, but as the day goes on and people have lost power and lost heat and the houses get colder, I'm sure they'll be seeking out locations to go. So we're manning those as well. School departments providing the food from the commissary. So we're as prepared as we can be. We're hoping for the best, you know, watching the weather to see what the tide looks like. I don't think it's going to exceed today's. Fortunately, it's not going to go any higher, but so to a large degree, the damage has been done to all these coastal areas, particularly houses. Then there's going to be a major cleanup effort. We'll have to assess the damage to our public, obviously, infrastructure, and then, of course, people's homes. We'll be working with those folks as they start to clean out, and there'll be a lot of debris from that. Our inspection services are going to work the weekend with our electrical inspectors, and also there's no hold up for people that are making repairs, and we can accommodate them as necessary with the permits.
Do we know if any schools have been affected thus far?
We watched one very closely because in the January storm we did lose boiler room and utilities at Broad Meadow School. It was about $750,000 worth of damage. That had been repaired, and that had been sandbagged and fortified, so we have not any damage with that.
A kid in school?
No, we canceled school today. Yep. I'm glad we did.
Yeah. And so as far as people in shelters, is Quincy High School, where else?
Atherton House School in House Neck, and the Squantum School in Squantum.
Are these the people that were evacuated?
Some, and some, just a couple I'm told, just walked to the site just to get away from the issue in their own neighborhood. So.
Any serious injuries so far?
Haven't heard of any serious injuries.
No storm-related serious injuries at this point, thankfully.
And the final message I guess you want to get out to your residents.
You know, we're all in this together. It's going to take some time. The tide has to go down before we can start pumping, so we ask people to be patient in that regard. Please stay home tonight. Don't come down to try to see what's going on, particularly at night. You know, we don't need additional traffic and somebody else getting stuck in a roadway and impeding what we're trying to accomplish. And we've had probably 4 or 5 dozen tree calls, major limbs and all. So there's not been a lot of wires down, but the wind is going to continue. So please, if wires are down, tell your kids to stay away from the wires until National Grid can get to that location.